American Motors was never afraid to experiment, and many of its most daring ideas never left the prototype stage. Yet these rare creations reveal a company constantly pushing boundaries, blending innovation, quirkiness, and ambition in ways that still fascinate enthusiasts today. Their legacy reminds us that even unrealized dreams can leave a lasting mark on automotive history. Number 25. 1962 AMC Bud XR 400. In the early 1960s, the American auto industry was on the verge of a youth-driven performance explosion. Ford was quietly preparing the Mustang, Chevrolet had already captured imaginations with the Corvette, and AMC was struggling to find a way to attract younger buyers beyond its conservative Rambler lineup. Into this moment stepped the Bud Company, a major body and engineering supplier, with a bold idea that could have rewritten AMC's history, the Bud XR 400. Built in 1962, the XR 400 was a fully functional prototype constructed on a shortened Rambler American chassis. Unlike the staid sedans AMC was known for, this was a low-slung two-seat sports convertible aimed squarely at the emerging pony car segment before it officially existed. Under its hood sat AMC's own 327 cubic inch V8, giving the lightweight body real performance potential. The styling was crisp and youthful, with a long hood, short deck proportions, and a roadster profile that looked unlike anything else in AMC showrooms. The Bud Company's strategy was clear. They wanted AMC to greenlight production and carve out a stake in a market that was about to explode. The XR 400's timing was nearly perfect. It debuted a full 6 months before Ford would reveal the Mustang. With its clean lines, convertible fun, and V8 power, the XR 400 could have been AMC's ticket to relevance among younger buyers who were flocking to sporty compacts. More importantly, it showed that AMC's existing engineering could easily be adapted into a fresh, exciting package. Yet AMC ultimately turned the proposal down. Management was wary of the costs associated with tooling and production for such a niche product. The company at that time was still focused on practicality and economy, clinging to the Rambler's identity as a sensible family car. As a result, AMC passed on what might have been one of its greatest opportunities, leaving the path wide open for Ford to dominate the new pony car category. Today, the Bud XR 400 is remembered as a tantalizing what-if moment in AMC history. Had AMC approved it, the company might have beaten the Mustang to market and reshaped its image in the eyes of a younger generation. Instead, the sole XR 400 prototype remains a fascinating relic of ambition, cut short. A car that showed AMC could dream big but lacked the corporate confidence to take the risk. In hindsight, the Bud XR 400 stands as one of the most significant missed opportunities in the history of American performance cars. Number 24. 1970 Jeep XJ1. In the year 1970, AMC had only recently taken full control of Jeep after acquiring Kaiser's operations, and the company was eager to show off what its new off-road brand could do under fresh management. Among the wildest experiments to emerge was the Jeep XJ1, a concept vehicle that was equal parts beach buggy, muscle car, and off-road hot rod. Unlike the utilitarian CJ Jeeps buyers were familiar with, the XJ1 was designed to dazzle auto show crowds and push Jeep's image into exciting, youthful territory. The XJ1 was built on the simple but rugged CJ5 chassis, though little else about it resembled the everyday trail rigs rolling out of Jeep showrooms. The prototype's body was a low-slung fiberglass roadster shell, stripped of doors and topped only with a minimalist roll bar. Its stance was more sports car than rock crawler, yet its bones were still pure Jeep. What truly set it apart, however, was its powertrain. Under the hood sat a 360 cubic inch AMC V8 rated at 285 horsepower. For a lightweight roadster body mounted to Jeep underpinnings, this was an enormous amount of power, giving the XJ1 the credentials to back up its radical appearance. When the concept made its public debut at the 1970 New York Auto Show, it caused a stir. Visitors marveled at the idea of a Jeep that could blast down a beach as easily as it could climb a dirt trail. The stripped-down fiberglass body, raked windshield, and aggressive stance gave it an undeniable presence. To many, it looked like AMC's answer to the dune buggy craze and the muscle car movement rolled into one. For Jeep, long associated with military service and rugged backroads, the XJ1 suggested a daring new lifestyle direction. Sadly, the XJ1's life was tragically short-lived. After wowing crowds in New York, the concept was being transported on a trailer when disaster struck. The rig overturned, and a subsequent fire completely destroyed the one-of-a-kind prototype. With it perished the chance for AMC to further explore this bold experiment in Jeep identity. No replicas were ever constructed, and the original design was lost to history. Today, the Jeep XJ1 exists only in photographs and memories, but it remains one of the most audacious AMC-backed Jeep concepts ever built. It demonstrated that AMC was willing to inject muscle car bravado into its newly acquired off-road brand, and it stands as a tantalizing reminder of what might have been if the project had survived beyond a single show season. Number 23. 1968 AMC AMX GT. In the late 1960s, AMC was working hard to reinvent its image from a company known for economy cars into a brand with real performance credibility. The introduction of the two-seat AMX in 1968 was a bold step in that direction, but AMC's designers were never content to stop at just one configuration. Almost immediately, Richard Teague's styling team began experimenting with variations, one of the most intriguing being the AMX GT, a concept that blended muscle car aggression with European-inspired grand touring flair. The AMX GT was essentially a design study that took the production AMX as its starting point and then pushed it in a radically different direction. Engineers chopped the roofline, shortened the overall height, and sculpted the rear into a distinctive combat tail. This transformed the AMX from a two-seat muscle coupe into a sleeker 2+2 fastback, giving it a sportier, more cosmopolitan character. The compact design was not just for looks, it hinted at aerodynamic efficiency and a racing-inspired ethos that was rare among American independents. Underneath, the car retained its AMX foundation, meaning the promise of AMC's V8 power plants remained intact. But visually, the AMX GT was a completely different animal, appearing almost like a hybrid of American muscle and Italian Gran Turismo. The fastback proportions and sharply truncated tail gave it a futuristic presence, and even though it was only a showpiece, it suggested what AMC might have achieved had it pursued a more adventurous performance line. The AMX GT's design cues did not vanish with the concept's disappearance. In fact, the chopped camback tail and compact hatch proportions foreshadowed styling elements that would resurface 2 years later in the AMC Gremlin. While the Gremlin was positioned as a quirky economy car rather than a sleek grand tourer, its abrupt rear profile bore more than a passing resemblance to the AMX GT's bold experiment. This lineage shows how even concepts that never reached production could leave fingerprints on AMC's mainstream vehicles. Displayed at auto shows in 1968, the AMX GT was never seriously considered for production, largely due to AMC's limited resources and the company's focus on getting its core performance models established. Still, it served an important purpose as a rolling showcase of AMC's willingness to experiment with form and function. For enthusiasts today, the AMX GT remains one of the most fascinating what-if chapters in AMC's history, a car that might have blended American muscle with European sophistication years before Detroit's larger players attempted the formula. Number 22. 1972 AMC Gremlin Voyager. By the early 1970s, AMC had already proven it could think outside the box with the quirky Gremlin, a subcompact hatchback that dared to chop the Hornet's body short and market it as something entirely new. But in 1972, AMC pushed the idea of small car versatility even further with the one-off Gremlin Voyager prototype, a playful and imaginative take on how a compact hatchback could double as a camper. At first glance, the Voyager looked like a regular Gremlin with its recognizable stubby profile and two-door hatchback shape. But hidden within its design was a clever engineering trick, a telescoping rear cargo module that pulled out like a drawer, instantly extending the car's usable space. This slide-out unit was affectionately nicknamed the Grim Bin, and it transformed the car into a mini camper when deployed. With the rear section extended, owners could carry camping gear, cooking equipment, or even create a makeshift sleeping area, something unheard of in cars this size. AMC's designers painted the Voyager in a cheerful two-tone scheme and equipped it with camping props to emphasize its purpose when it was shown to the public. The car's clever use of limited space tapped into the early 70s cultural fascination with camping, road trips, and self-contained vehicles like VW camper vans. Where Volkswagen appealed to counterculture buyers with its microbus, AMC seemed to be asking, why couldn't an American subcompact play the same role in a more compact, quirky fashion? The practicality of the Voyager, however, was only surface deep. While the Grimbin was inventive, the extension added weight and complexity to a small car already powered by modest engines. Structural rigidity was also a concern, and AMC's limited resources meant the idea was never going to see production on a large scale. Still, the concept demonstrated just how creative AMC could be in reimagining one of its cheapest models into something adventurous and fun. Only one Gremlin Voyager prototype was ever built, and after its tour of auto shows, it quietly faded from view. Yet it remains a fascinating snapshot of AMC's willingness to take risks and appeal to lifestyle buyers long before crossovers and compact adventure vehicles became mainstream. The Voyager proved that even the smallest cars could be reimagined for bigger adventures, and in doing so, it carved out a unique place in AMC's long list of imaginative what-if creations. Number 21. 1974 AMC Matador Barcelona prototype. By the mid-1970s, AMC was striving to give its mid-size Matador a more upscale image, hoping to attract buyers who might otherwise have gone to Buick, Oldsmobile, or Chrysler. One of the most interesting experiments during this push was the Matador Barcelona prototype, which served as an early testbed for what would later become a luxury trim package on AMC's production cars. The Barcelona name itself suggested European sophistication, and AMC designers wanted to capture that flavor in a car that still carried the brand's uniquely American identity. The prototype cars built in 1974 featured experimental color palettes, lavish upholstery patterns, and additional chrome flourishes that stood apart from the standard Matador coupe and sedan. Inside, AMC tested different seat materials that combine cloth, vinyl, and wood grain accents in unusual ways, searching for a mix that would feel premium without driving up costs beyond AMC's reach. These prototypes also explored exterior styling details that were not entirely finalized when shown to executives and in early promotional photographs. Some wore unique two-tone paint schemes, often pairing bold earth tones with metallic highlights to reflect contemporary tastes of the era. Other details included special badging and trim variations, foreshadowing the production Barcelona models that would eventually debut several years later. In short, these prototypes acted as rolling design laboratories, letting AMC refine its interpretation of affordable luxury. It is important to understand that AMC was not in a position to launch entirely new platforms during this period. Instead, it had to innovate within the boundaries of its existing models, making trim-level experimentation a cost-effective way to freshen its lineup. The Matador Barcelona prototypes therefore represented both creative styling exercises and practical marketing studies, testing how much extra flair AMC customers would pay for in a mid-size car. By the late 1970s, the Barcelona name would be applied to production Matador models, though in a more restrained and standardized form. The prototypes from 1974, however, remain significant because they show the early stages of AMC's attempt to court buyers with European-inspired luxury touches at a time when the American market was changing rapidly. For collectors and historians, these early versions reveal the company's thought process and its willingness to experiment even when financial resources were tight. In the end, the Matador Barcelona prototype illustrates AMC's broader philosophy, using creativity and clever trim experiments to keep pace with competitors who had far larger budgets. It was not a car meant for mass production in its prototype form, but it set the stage for one of AMC's more distinctive, luxury-oriented offerings, proving again that the company's design department was often years ahead of its limited means. Number 20. 1984 AMC Eagle Refresh Prototype. By the early 1980s, the AMC Eagle had carved out a loyal niche audience as America's first mass-produced four-wheel drive passenger car. Based on the Concorde platform, the Eagle successfully blended station wagon practicality with genuine off-road capability, a formula that would foreshadow the crossover boom decades later. But by 1984, the design was already looking dated, and AMC considered refreshing the car to extend its life in the marketplace. The Eagle Refresh prototype was created as a styling study to update the vehicle's appearance without the cost of developing an all-new model. To achieve this, designers reused major components such as the fenders, hood, and lower door sections, while experimenting with new rooflines and upper door treatments to give the car a crisper, more contemporary look. The intent was to create a sleeker silhouette that would still be recognizable as an Eagle, but with sharper, more angular proportions in line with mid-80s trends. This prototype featured a more squared-off roofline compared to the original Eagle, with window shapes reworked to appear cleaner and more modern. The changes were subtle but important, as they aimed to bring the Eagle visually closer to AMC's newer Jeep Cherokee XJ, which was earning strong sales thanks to its boxy modern design. In essence, AMC was attempting to bridge the gap between its aging Eagle and the future of its utility lineup without abandoning the existing tooling investments that kept the model profitable. The engineering logic behind the refresh was as practical as the car itself. By retaining the lower bodywork, AMC would have minimized production costs while still offering customers something fresh on showroom floors. But the proposed redesign required significant new tooling for the roof and upper doors, and with AMC's fragile financial situation, such an investment was difficult to justify. At the same time, the company's attention was increasingly focused on Jeep products, which offered higher profit margins and stronger market growth. Ultimately, the Eagle Refresh prototype never advanced beyond the study phase. The production Eagle continued with only modest trim updates until it was quietly discontinued later in the decade. Yet the prototype demonstrates AMC's awareness of changing market demands and its willingness to innovate within tight constraints. It also illustrates the difficult choices facing the company in its final years, whether to update older models or concentrate resources on its most promising assets. Today, the 1984 Eagle Refresh prototype stands as an intriguing what-if moment. Had AMC managed to fund the redesign, the Eagle might have looked more modern in its last years and perhaps held on to buyers longer. Instead, it remains a forgotten styling exercise, a reminder of AMC's constant struggle to balance creativity with survival. Number 19, 1981-82 AMC Concorde Sundancer. In the early 1980s, American Motors was searching for creative ways to keep its existing models relevant in a market that was becoming increasingly competitive. The Concorde, a practical sedan and coupe derived from AMC's Hornet roots, was hardly the kind of car that would turn heads at a time when sporty imports and flashy domestic coupes were drawing younger buyers. To inject some excitement, AMC turned to an outside partner, the Griffith Company in Florida, to create a limited-run convertible conversion that became known as the Sundancer. The Sundancer began life as a standard Concorde coupe, but Griffith engineers transformed it with a unique Targa-style roof design. A reinforced central bar ran across the roofline, and the sections on either side could be removed or folded back to simulate open-air driving. At the rear, a special folding soft top was engineered to drop into the trunk area, giving the car the full convertible experience. Structural reinforcements were added underneath the body to restore rigidity lost when the original roof was cut away, ensuring the car remained safe and drivable. AMC displayed early Sundancer prototypes at auto shows in 1981 and 1982, often painted in striking colors to emphasize their sporty nature. The cars were fully functional and drivable, serving as real-world testbeds for whether buyers would respond to the idea of a Concorde convertible. Griffith even created subtle variations among the earliest prototypes, experimenting with different ways of handling the Targa bar and window surrounds before settling on the final design used for customer conversions. Ultimately, only about 200 Sundancers were produced, each one converted by Griffith after leaving AMC's assembly line. Buyers had to pay a premium of several $1,000s above the base Concorde's price, which made the Sundancer more expensive than many buyers were willing to spend on what was essentially a novelty version of a family car. Still, the car served as a fascinating experiment in how AMC could broaden its lineup with minimal investment. Though the Sundancer never achieved high sales, it remains one of AMC's more charming oddities. The prototype versions, in particular, stand out because they reveal just how much thought and variation went into making the design feasible before it reached paying customers. Today, collectors prize the few surviving Sundancers as rare pieces of AMC's twilight years, a reminder that even in its most challenging decade, the company was still willing to innovate in unexpected ways. Number 18. 1980 AMC Concorde Gas Turbine. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, government agencies were pouring money into alternative powertrain research, hoping to find technologies that could reduce America's dependence on conventional gasoline engines. Among the most intriguing experiments of this period was the idea of using gas turbine engines in passenger cars, a technology more commonly associated with aircraft or heavy equipment. AMC, though far smaller than the Big Three, was tapped to participate in this research, and the result was the unusual 1980 AMC Concorde gas turbine prototype. The project was tied to a NASA-backed program known as the Improved Gas Turbine, or IGT, which sought to refine turbine technology for automotive use. Gas turbines promised several advantages. They were mechanically simpler than piston engines, they could run on multiple fuels, and they produced fewer emissions under steady operating conditions. AMC engineers fitted the prototype Concorde sedan with an experimental turbine power plant, adapting the body and chassis to accommodate the unusual engine layout. From the outside, the turbine Concorde looked much like any other Concorde sedan, a deliberate choice to allow researchers to focus on the powertrain rather than radical styling. Inside and under the hood, however, things were quite different. The turbine engine, while compact, required special insulation and unique transmission gearing to make it usable in an everyday car. AMC also worked with government engineers to integrate improved materials that could withstand the high operating temperatures that turbines generated. Test drives revealed a car that was smooth and eerily quiet at cruising speeds, but not without drawbacks. Acceleration was sluggish compared to conventional piston-powered sedans, and fuel economy in real-world driving did not match the optimistic laboratory projections. While the technology showed promise, the complexity of adapting a turbine for stop-and-go passenger use proved a challenge too great for a company with AMC's limited resources. By the early 1980s, enthusiasm for turbine-powered cars had begun to wane, with Chrysler also stepping back from its well-known turbine experiments. The AMC Concorde gas turbine remained a single testbed vehicle, used primarily for demonstration and data collection before disappearing into obscurity. Today, this prototype stands as a symbol of AMC's willingness to take part in cutting-edge research despite its size. It underscores a recurring theme in the company's history. AMC might not have had the financial muscle of its rivals, but it was consistently willing to explore unconventional paths, even if those paths ultimately led to dead ends. Number 17. 1971 AMC Jeep Cowboy. During the early 1970s, American consumers were beginning to notice the arrival of small, fuel-efficient pickup trucks from Japan, particularly offerings from Toyota and Datsun. AMC, which had just taken ownership of Jeep in 1970, quickly recognized that its new division might need a product to compete in this emerging market. Out of this concern came the AMC Jeep Cowboy, a compact pickup prototype that attempted to blend passenger car comfort with Jeep ruggedness. The Cowboy was based on AMC's Hornet platform, and engineers essentially grafted the Hornet's familiar car front end onto a purpose-built pickup bed. This gave the truck a sleek, almost car-like appearance compared to traditional utilitarian pickups, aligning it more closely with the small Japanese imports it was meant to rival. 3 versions of the Cowboy were built, one badged as a Jeep and painted red, while the other 2 carried AMC branding. The variations were not just cosmetic. One AMC badge prototype even housed a powerful 360 cubic inch V8, a striking contrast to the modest 4-cylinder engines typically found in compact pickups of the era. From a design standpoint, the Cowboy was appealing and forward-looking. Its car-based underpinnings promised a smoother ride than body-on-frame pickups, while still offering utility through its truck bed. The concept was perfectly timed, anticipating the growing American appetite for versatile small pickups that could serve both as work vehicles and lifestyle companions. AMC's display of both Jeep and AMC badging also revealed internal debate over whether this truck should carry the rugged Jeep identity or be marketed under the more mainstream AMC banner. Despite its promise, the Cowboy never made it to showrooms. Financially, AMC was stretched thin, and management ultimately decided to prioritize development of the Hornet hatchback, a project that would better utilize existing tooling and serve a broader segment of the market. Jeep's existing lineup of traditional CJ models and Wagoneers also continued to sell steadily, reducing pressure to gamble on a brand new pickup category. In the end, the Cowboy remained a prototype exercise, its potential never fully realized. Looking back, the Jeep Cowboy feels like a missed opportunity. The popularity of compact pickups soared throughout the 1970s and 80s, with Japanese imports establishing a lasting foothold in the United States market. Had AMC brought the Cowboy into production, it might have carved out an early slice of that demand and given Jeep a foothold in a segment it would not properly revisit until much later. Today, the surviving prototypes are fascinating artifacts of AMC's restless creativity, proof that the company was keenly aware of industry shifts, even if it lacked the resources to capitalize on them. Number 16. 1981 AMC AMX Turbo PPG Pace Car. By the early 1980s, AMC was fighting for recognition in a marketplace dominated by the Big Three, but the company still knew how to make a splash when the opportunity arose. One of the most spectacular examples of this came in 1981, when AMC partnered with Auto Dynamics to create a one-of-a-kind pace car for the PPG IndyCar World Series. The result was the AMC AMX Turbo, a wild, high-performance showpiece that demonstrated just how far the Spirit AMX platform could be pushed when freed from production constraints. The car began life as a Spirit AMX, but was transformed almost beyond recognition. Its most radical feature was the fiberglass wide-body kit, which exaggerated the fender flares, smoothed the bodywork, and incorporated massive ducts to feed air into the turbocharged engine. A unique ram air intake was sculpted directly into the quarter panels, giving the car a futuristic, almost race car appearance. Painted in an eye-searing bright orange livery, the AMX Turbo looked every bit the part of a show-stopping pace car designed to stand out at IndyCar events. Underneath the bodywork was an equally dramatic mechanical transformation. AMC's familiar 4.2-liter inline-six served as the foundation, but with the addition of a turbocharger and significant tuning, the engine's output skyrocketed to a staggering 450 horsepower. This was an extraordinary figure for AMC, especially given the emissions-choked era in which most of its production engines struggled to reach half that number. The AMX Turbo was proof that AMC's engineering team could still dream big and deliver real performance when unshackled from budget and regulatory pressures. The AMX Turbo toured with the PPG pace car fleet, serving as both a promotional tool and an attention grabber at races across the country. Fans were captivated by its radical styling and the idea of an AMC pace car mixing it up with exotics and Detroit's most aggressive showpieces. Yet for all its spectacle, the AMX Turbo was never intended for production. It remained a one-off, too expensive and impractical to replicate for dealers, but perfectly suited to AMC's role as an underdog punching above its weight. After its time on the show circuit, the lone AMX Turbo eventually landed in private hands, where it has been preserved as a rare artifact of AMC's willingness to experiment. Today, it stands as a reminder that even in its twilight years, AMC could still surprise the automotive world with daring designs and audacious performance concepts. The AMX Turbo may have been fleeting, but it captured the spirit of innovation that defined AMC's most memorable creations. Number 15. 1977 AMC Jeep Concept. By the late 1970s, Jeep was already a cornerstone of AMC's survival strategy, but management knew the brand needed to evolve if it was going to thrive in the new decade. The CJ series and Wagoneer were popular, but they represented a more traditional view of utility vehicles. At the same time, consumer tastes were shifting toward more refined four-wheel drive machines that could balance ruggedness with comfort, and AMC wanted to explore what that future might look like. Out of this forward-thinking exercise came the AMC Jeep concept, one of the centerpieces of AMC's Concept 80 show tour in 1977. This concept was designed to test ideas that might shape Jeep vehicles into the 1980s. It retained Jeep's well-known toughness, but softened the lines into something more modern and aerodynamic, abandoning the purely utilitarian shapes of the past. The body was lower and wider than a CJ, and the cabin featured larger glass areas for improved visibility, signaling a direction closer to the sport utility vehicles that would dominate decades later. The front end was smooth and integrated, lacking the exposed hardware and boxy fenders that had defined Jeeps for decades. The interior also reflected AMC's desire to reposition Jeep as more than just a workhorse. Instead of bare-bones seating and simple dashboards, the Jeep concept featured car-like appointments, with plusher materials and an emphasis on comfort for passengers. The goal was to demonstrate that Jeep could retain its reputation for off-road capability while appealing to suburban families who wanted utility vehicles that felt at home on paved streets as well. Although the concept was strictly a showpiece, it revealed a lot about AMC's priorities at the time. Jeep was no longer just about rough terrain, it was increasingly being positioned as a lifestyle brand, something adventurous but also practical for everyday use. The idea of combining off-road capability with greater refinement would become the cornerstone of Jeep's success in the coming decades, and this 1977 study foreshadowed the design language that would eventually lead to models like the Cherokee XJ. In the end, the 1977 AMC Jeep concept was never meant for production, but its significance lies in how it previewed the SUV era long before it took hold. AMC's small design team was once again ahead of its time, crafting a vision of Jeep that would ultimately define the company's legacy even after AMC itself disappeared. Number 14. 1977 AMC Grand Touring Concept. When AMC rolled out its Concept 80 tour in 1977, it wasn't just trying to showcase radical ideas for future compact cars, it was also attempting to reimagine its sporty heritage in a new form. One of the most striking examples from that showcase was the AMC Grand Touring Concept, a car that blended upscale styling cues with the promise of performance in a way that AMC hoped would resonate with younger buyers who had once flocked to the AMX. The Grand Touring Concept was envisioned as a two-door hatchback coupe, but unlike AMC's economy-focused compacts, this one was dressed to impress. Its long, sloping roofline and wide stance gave it a far more sophisticated profile than the upright gremlin it loosely shared DNA with. To emphasize its luxury positioning, AMC designers finished the concept in rich two-tone paint and fitted it with opera-style rear windows framed by a padded vinyl roof, touches usually reserved for high-end personal coupes of the era. Inside, the Grand Touring Concept carried a plush interior that contrasted sharply with AMC's typical small car offerings. The cabin was trimmed with a mix of leather and corduroy upholstery, accented with wood-grain panels and upscale detailing. The seating layout provided comfort for 4 passengers, with bucket seats and a center console hinting at a driver-focused experience. Even details like genuine wire wheels reinforced AMC's desire to elevate this compact hatchback into a category where refinement and style mattered as much as practicality. Beneath the sheet metal, the car was more about presentation than engineering innovation, but that didn't matter to showgoers. The Grand Touring Concept received enthusiastic feedback at the Concept 80 events, where it earned second place in public voting, just behind the flamboyant AM van. Attendees were clearly drawn to the idea of a compact AMC that felt premium, sporty, and stylish without straying into the territory of the large Detroit coupes. Despite the excitement, AMC never moved the Grand Touring Concept toward production. Financial realities limited what could be brought to market, and the company chose to focus on more mainstream projects like the Spirit and Concorde. Yet, the Grand Touring Concept foreshadowed the styling language AMC would adopt in the late 70s and early 80s, particularly in its emphasis on blending practicality with luxury cues. In retrospect, the Grand Touring Concept stands out as one of AMC's more refined design studies. It demonstrated that even a company with limited resources could still imagine compact cars with an upscale edge. For collectors and enthusiasts, it remains a fascinating what if, a car that might have carved AMC a stronger place in the personal luxury compact segment had it ever made the leap from show stand to showroom. Number 13. 1977 AMC Electron. In the late 1970s, AMC was still experimenting with futuristic vehicle concepts despite its limited resources. Among the highlights of the company's Concept 80 show tour was the AMC Electron, a tiny wedge-shaped electric city car that built upon the ideas of the earlier 1967 Amatron. Where the Amatron had been AMC's first bold leap into battery-powered driving, the Electron was an updated version meant to showcase how far the technology and styling had come in a single decade. The Electron was unmistakably futuristic for its time. Its proportions were extremely compact, designed for urban mobility at a time when gasoline shortages and environmental concerns were reshaping the way people thought about cars. The two-seat hatchback featured sharp angles, a short wedge-shaped body, and pop-up headlights that gave it a space-age personality. Painted in a vivid orange, the Electron stood out among AMC's other concepts, which were themselves unconventional, but none quite as radical as this tiny electric commuter. Inside, the Electron was a minimalist study in efficiency. Seating for two passengers was compact but comfortable, and the large windshield and side glass created an airy cabin feel despite the car's small footprint. Unlike AMC's traditional vehicles, this concept was not about long road trips or muscle car thrills. It was about redefining personal transportation for crowded cities and shorter commutes. 5. The technical story behind the Electron was just as interesting as its design. AMC drew on lessons from the Amatron, incorporating improved battery chemistry and advanced ideas such as regenerative braking, which could recover energy during deceleration. For the late 1970s, this was forward-thinking technology that anticipated features later seen in mainstream hybrids and electric vehicles decades afterward. While exact performance specifications were never made public, the Electron was positioned as a practical, zero-emissions commuter at a time when very few automakers were even considering the idea seriously. Despite its forward-looking appeal, the Electron remained firmly a concept. Battery costs, limited infrastructure, and AMC's precarious finances meant there was no realistic path to production. Still, its inclusion in the Concept 80 lineup demonstrated AMC's commitment to experimentation and its ability to anticipate trends that would not fully mature until long after the company's demise. Today, the AMC Electron is remembered as one of AMC's boldest what-if projects. Had circumstances been different, it might have placed AMC ahead of the electric vehicle curve by decades. Instead, it remains a striking example of how AMC's small but inventive design team consistently punched above its weight, envisioning a future others would only later begin to explore. Number 12. 1977 AMC Concept 2. As part of AMC's ambitious Concept 80 showcase in 1977, several experimental small cars were created to test out ideas for the next generation of compact vehicles. Among them was the Concept 2, a gremlin-based prototype that pushed design in a direction AMC had not previously attempted. Where Concept 1 had emphasized improved visibility and a quirky, upright profile, Concept 2 was more futuristic, more aerodynamic, and clearly aimed at presenting a sleek vision of what AMC's compact cars could become in the 1980s. The most distinctive element of Concept 2 was its hidden headlamps, a feature usually reserved for higher-end sporty coupes rather than economy-oriented compacts. The front fascia was smooth and uninterrupted when the lamps were closed, giving the car a clean, modern appearance. This design choice immediately separated it from the boxy gremlin it was derived from, suggesting that AMC wanted to align itself with the growing global interest in aerodynamic design. Equally striking was the structural band that arched over the roofline, reminiscent of a targa or roll bar design. This target band gave the car a futuristic, almost concept car-only flavor, while also suggesting structural reinforcement, something useful for a hatchback body. The glass areas were larger and more integrated than the Gremlins, improving visibility while giving the car a more expansive and airy look from inside. Combined with flush bumpers that blended into the bodywork, Concept 2 looked nothing like AMC's existing subcompacts and everything like a preview of what might come next. Inside, the prototype was meant to highlight comfort and ergonomics, with hints of sportiness to match its exterior flair. Seating was arranged to emphasize a driver-focused environment, while interior trim materials were chosen to elevate the car above the Spartan image associated with AMC's smaller models. Although not fully functional, Concept 2 provided a glimpse at what AMC believed younger buyers might want, something stylish and aspirational rather than simply cheap and practical. Public reaction to Concept 2 was positive, but AMC's reality at the time was harsh. Limited funds meant that translating such an ambitious design into production was unlikely. Still, styling cues from Concept 2 did not go to waste. Features like its more integrated bumpers and refined proportions would influence the production AMC spirit that debuted in the late 1970s. In hindsight, the 1977 Concept 2 stands as one of AMC's most forward-thinking design exercises. It revealed that the company understood the growing importance of aerodynamics and style in the compact market, even if it lacked the resources to fully capitalize on those insights. Number 11. 1977 AMC Concept 1. In 1977, AMC staged its Concept 80 Traveling Showcase, an ambitious attempt to demonstrate what the company's cars might look like heading into the next decade. Among the prototypes revealed was the Concept 1, a gremlin-based study that experimented with reimagining AMC's smallest car in a more modern and adventurous way. While modest in scope compared to some of the wilder concepts in the lineup, Concept 1 embodied AMC's determination to refresh its compact car strategy without massive investment. The Concept 1 carried over some of the Gremlin's basic DNA, but it had been reworked with sharper lines and subtle design tricks that gave it a new personality. The front end was redesigned with squared-off headlights and a more integrated fascia, helping it look less dated than the bug-eyed face of the production Gremlin. Along the sides, designers added small quarter windows behind the doors, a change that significantly improved visibility for drivers, a key criticism of the original Gremlin's design. At the rear, Concept 1 featured a squared hatch section capped by a faux Continental tire bulge molded into the panel. This odd but eye-catching feature was an attempt to inject personality into the otherwise stubby tail of the Gremlin, while also evoking the custom touches seen on higher-end luxury cars of the period. The idea of blending quirky compact design with touches of upscale styling was very much in line with AMC's broader philosophy of finding niches the larger automakers ignored. Inside, the prototype was fitted with a more refined interior than a standard Gremlin, suggesting that AMC wanted to position future compacts as both affordable and stylish. The dashboard carried cleaner lines, and the seats were trimmed in upgraded materials, hinting that buyers could expect a more comfortable ride without giving up economy. It was a careful balancing act, making a small car appealing while still keeping it within reach of budget-conscious shoppers. Though Concept 1 was never intended for production, it gave the public and AMC management a tangible look at possible directions for the Gremlin's replacement. Feedback gathered from the Concept 80 tour indicated that people appreciated the improved visibility and cleaner styling, even if the faux spare tire bulge drew mixed reactions. Some of the car's ideas would influence the design of the AMC Spirit, which would debut in the late 1970s as the Gremlin's successor. In the end, the 1977 Concept 1 stands as a reminder of AMC's ingenuity. Even with scarce resources, the company's designers were capable of dreaming up creative solutions to modernize their lineup. It was not the flashiest of AMC's prototypes, but it embodied the practical, slightly quirky innovation that made AMC such a fascinating outlier in American automotive history. Number 10. 1977 AMC AM Van. Among the most flamboyant creations of AMC's Concept 80 tour in 1977 was the AM Van, a radical design study that looked more like a Hot Wheels toy than something meant for the road. Unlike AMC's more restrained compact prototypes, the AM Van was deliberately over the top, designed to capture attention and show off just how daring AMC's design studio could be when freed from production constraints. The AM Van was built around a wooden frame and clad in fiberglass panels, meaning it was not a functioning automobile but rather a full-scale styling model. Despite that, the details suggested a wild machine intended to blur the line between muscle car, van, and off-road toy. The front end resembled a stretched AMC Pacer nose, with enormous wraparound glass that gave the driver a panoramic view. Fender flares bulged aggressively around the wheel arches, while fat tires and side exhaust pipes underscored the vehicle's fantasy appeal. It was the kind of concept that could never survive AMC's limited budget realities, yet it perfectly embodied the spirit of the show car stage. The AM van was envisioned as a two-seater compact van with futuristic touches. Promotional material suggested the possibility of a turbocharged engine and all-wheel drive, even though the concept itself lacked any drivetrain at all. The interior, though never fully functional, was imagined as a sporty cockpit with deeply reclined bucket seats and a high-tech dashboard to reinforce its role as a lifestyle vehicle for adventurous young buyers. When presented to the public, the AM van was a sensation. At the Concept 80 exhibitions, attendees were asked to vote for their favorite of AMC's prototypes, and the AM van won decisively with nearly one-third of all ballots cast. Its exaggerated proportions, bold orange and black graphics, and futuristic aura tapped directly into the cultural fascination with custom vans and youth-oriented cars of the 70s. Though everyone knew it was a fantasy machine, its sheer visual punch made it the star of the tour. Of course, AMC never had the resources to build anything like the AM van for production. It remained a wooden and fiberglass showpiece, touring auto shows before fading into history. Yet its influence can still be felt in the way it captured the imagination of enthusiasts who saw AMC not as stodgy, but as daringly creative. The AM van proved that even when the company's finances were precarious, its designers could still dream as wildly as anyone in Detroit. Number 9. 1973 AMC Gremlin XP. By the early 1970s, the AMC Gremlin had carved out a peculiar niche in the American car market. Its chopped-down Hornet body and unusual proportions made it instantly recognizable, but also controversial. Critics often pointed to its poor visibility and stubby rear end as major drawbacks, even while buyers appreciated its affordability and quirky charm. In response, AMC designers began to explore ways to refine the Gremlin's look and functionality, and out of that came the Gremlin XP, an experimental prototype built in 1973. The XP, which stood for Experimental Prototype, was a serious attempt to address the shortcomings of the production Gremlin. One of the biggest changes was the addition of a large wraparound glass hatch, which dramatically improved rearward visibility compared to the tiny vertical backlight of the stock model. Designers also reworked the rear pillars, adding small angled quarter windows to eliminate the Gremlin's infamous blind spots. These subtle but important modifications gave the car a lighter, airier feel from the driver's seat, answering one of the most persistent criticisms of the original design. Beyond visibility improvements, the Gremlin XP was styled to look more modern and sporty. The rear fenders were slightly bulged to give the car a more muscular stance, and the hatchback profile flowed more gracefully than the abrupt cutoff of the production car. Up front, minor tweaks to the grille and headlamp arrangement hinted at a sleeker identity, aligning the XP more closely with the design direction AMC would later pursue with the Spirit liftback. AMC's design chief, Richard Teague, reportedly held on to the XP long after its show circuit life was over, a testament to the affection within the company for what it represented. It was not just a styling exercise, it was proof that the Gremlin could be reimagined into something less awkward and more aspirational. Had AMC's financial situation been stronger, the XP might have evolved into a second-generation Gremlin, or even directly inspired a production hatchback earlier than the Spirit. Ultimately, the Gremlin XP remained a one-off, never advancing past the prototype stage. But its ideas lived on, influencing AMC's future compacts and foreshadowing design elements that would appear in later models. For enthusiasts today, the XP is remembered as one of AMC's most practical and forward-thinking concepts, an effort to refine a car that, while successful, desperately needed polish. In hindsight, it stands as a fascinating what-if, showing just how close AMC came to solving the Gremlin's greatest flaws. Number 8. 1964 Rambler Tarpon. In the early 1960s, AMC was experimenting with ways to attract younger buyers, a demographic it often struggled to win over with its conservative Ramblers. Enter the Rambler Tarpon, a striking 2+2 fastback coupe built on the compact Rambler American platform. Debuting at the 1964 Chicago Auto Show, the Tarpon was AMC's bold attempt to inject style and excitement into its small car lineup, foreshadowing the sporty fastbacks that would soon sweep Detroit. The Tarpon's most dramatic feature was its roofline. Unlike AMC's existing sedans and wagons, the Tarpon had a long, sleek fastback roof that flowed seamlessly into the tail, creating a sporty silhouette never before seen on a Rambler. Inside, the Tarpon carried 4 bucket seats arranged in a 2+2 configuration, emphasizing its performance-oriented image while retaining practicality for small families. It also featured AMC's twin-stick manual transmission, a quirky dual-lever setup that allowed quick gear changes and added a dash of sportiness. The design team under Richard Teague envisioned the Tarpon as AMC's entry into what would later be called the pony car segment. It was smaller and more affordable than sporty coupes from Ford or Chevrolet, but it had the kind of style and attitude that could attract younger buyers. The Tarpon was also painted in a vivid red that underscored its show car appeal, and the sleek fastback proportions made it look like it belonged in the same conversation as the Mustang, months before Ford unveiled its now iconic car. But while the Tarpon generated excitement on the auto show circuit, AMC's executives ultimately declined to put it into production. One major issue was its compact size. Management believed American buyers would prefer a larger fastback coupe, so instead of greenlighting the Tarpon, they scaled the idea up and introduced the Rambler Marlin in 1965, based on the bigger classic platform. Unfortunately, the Marlin's larger proportions diluted the sporty spirit of the original Tarpon, and it failed to connect with the youth market in the same way a production Tarpon might have. Today, the Rambler Tarpon is remembered as one of AMC's greatest missed opportunities. Had it reached showrooms, AMC could have been first to market with a compact fastback, beating Ford's Mustang to the punch. Instead, the Tarpon remained a one-off concept, a tantalizing glimpse of what might have been if AMC had trusted its instincts and embraced the youthful energy the car so clearly embodied. Number 7. 1969 AMC AMX3 AMX 3rd. By the end of the 1960s, AMC was beginning to shed its reputation as a builder of only economy cars, thanks in part to the bold AMX and Javelin models. But Richard Teague and his design team wanted something even more dramatic, a halo car that could stand alongside the finest Italian exotics of the day. Out of this ambition was born the AMX3, later informally called the AMX 3rd, a mid-engine supercar that represented AMC's most audacious leap into performance territory. The AMX3 was developed in collaboration with Italian engineer Giotto Bizzarini, famous for his work on Ferrari and Lamborghini projects. Its body was a low-slung steel monocoque with sharp edges and aggressive proportions, far removed from the upright compacts AMC was known for. The car sat low and wide, with a clean, purposeful shape that rivaled European exotics such as the De Tomaso Pantera. At its heart was AMC's own 390 cubic inch V8, mounted amidships and tuned to deliver around 340 horsepower to the rear wheels. This gave the car the performance credibility it needed to back up its exotic styling. 6 examples of the AMX3 were built between 1969 and 1970. Each hand-assembled in Italy and subtly different from one another. The prototypes were fully functional and capable of serious performance, with independent suspension, 4-wheel disc brakes, and handling far beyond what any other AMC product could achieve at the time. Early tests suggested the AMX3 could reach speeds in excess of 150 miles per hour, a remarkable figure for an independent American automaker. The AMX3 was intended to be produced in limited numbers, giving AMC a flagship car to raise its prestige and attract attention worldwide. Unfortunately, the project was enormously expensive for a company with AMC's limited resources. As costs mounted, management grew nervous about whether there would be enough buyers to justify production. At the same time, the economic climate was shifting, and AMC's focus turned back toward more practical models that could deliver immediate sales volume. By 1971, the AMX3 project was canceled, leaving the 6 prototypes as the only evidence of AMC's supercar experiment. Today, these cars are highly prized by collectors and automotive historians, not only for their rarity, but also for the boldness of their conception. They remain proof that AMC, despite its reputation as the underdog of Detroit, once dreamed big enough to create a true exotic, a car that could have redefined its image had circumstances been different. Number 6. 1968 AMX GT. By the late 1960s, AMC was riding a wave of newfound performance credibility with the introduction of the AMX and the Javelin. But while the 2-seat AMX was designed to compete directly with muscle coupes, the styling team under Richard Teague was already imagining alternate versions that could give AMC an even broader appeal. One of the most fascinating of these offshoots was the AMX GT, a Grand Touring-style concept coupe that reinterpreted the production AMX with a focus on style and aerodynamics rather than brute force. The AMX GT began as a design study, and AMC's team set about radically altering the proportions of the standard AMX. The roofline was chopped lower, instantly giving the car a more aggressive stance. At the rear, the designers replaced the traditional deck with a sharply truncated camback tail, a shape inspired by European racing practice that reduced drag while maintaining usable space. This created a sleek 2+2 fastback profile rather than the original AMX's 2-seat configuration. The effect was striking, an American muscle car infused with the elegance of European GT design. Though the AMX GT was never a functioning prototype, its presence on the show circuit in 1968 caused a stir. Audiences were intrigued by its blend of bold styling and aerodynamic efficiency, a combination not often seen in Detroit iron at the time. Many observers noted that it looked futuristic, even compared to other domestic concept cars. And it suggested that AMC was prepared to experiment with design directions that were unconventional but appealing. Perhaps the most interesting legacy of the AMX GT was the influence it had on later AMC production models. The truncated tail and compact hatchback-like rear treatment would resurface just 2 years later in the AMC Gremlin, though in a much more utilitarian form. This continuity reveals how AMC frequently mined its show cars for design elements that could be adapted to production, even when the concepts themselves remained one-offs. The AMX GT, in that sense, served as both an experiment in grand touring style and a seedbed for future ideas. In hindsight, the AMX GT feels like one of AMC's most forward-looking concepts. It showed that the company understood the growing importance of aerodynamics and European-inspired styling, even if it lacked the means to pursue such cars in production. While it never turned a wheel on the road, the AMX GT left a lasting impression on AMC's design language, proving again that the smallest of Detroit's automakers could still dream on a grand scale. Number 5. 1967 AMC Amatron. By the late 1960s, environmental concerns and fuel efficiency were becoming growing topics in the American auto industry. AMC, despite being the smallest of the domestic automakers, surprised the world in 1967 by unveiling the Amatron, a futuristic electric prototype that seemed decades ahead of its time. This small 3-passenger hatchback represented one of the boldest attempts yet to reimagine what a personal car could be in an era dominated by gas-guzzling V8s. The Amatron's design was radical from the outset. Just under 100 inches long, the car had a short, aerodynamic wedge-shaped body with a wide stance and a canopy-like roof that lifted up for entry rather than conventional doors. The interior was minimalist but futuristic, with seating for 3 in a 1+2 layout, the driver positioned up front and 2 passengers tucked behind. It was painted in bright orange, underscoring its concept car personality, and it looked more like something from a science fiction film than an AMC showroom. Technically, the Amatron was even more remarkable. Developed in partnership with Golton Industries, the car employed a unique dual battery system combining nickel-cadmium and lithium-nickel fluoride packs. This hybridized battery layout was designed to balance high power for acceleration with long-range cruising efficiency. AMC claimed the Amatron could achieve a range of up to 150 miles at a steady 50 miles per hour, numbers that wouldn't look out of place on electric cars introduced more than 40 years later. It also featured regenerative braking, an innovation that would not become mainstream until the advent of hybrids in the late 1990s. Despite the excitement it generated, the Amatron never progressed past the prototype stage. The cost of its exotic batteries was prohibitive, and the infrastructure to support electric cars simply didn't exist in 1967. AMC, already strapped for resources, could not afford to push the project forward, even though the concept suggested a tantalizing glimpse of a future less dependent on fossil fuels. Instead, the Amatron became a showpiece of what might be possible rather than a practical offering for buyers. Looking back, the AMC Amatron is often regarded as one of the most visionary American concept cars of its era. It predicted not only the electric car revolution, but also the focus on lightweight urban vehicles with advanced technology. While AMC itself would never realize that vision, the Amatron remains a testament to the company's willingness to innovate, reminding us that even the smallest automaker in Detroit could dream on a grand scale about the future of mobility. Number 4. 1966 AMC AMX Second. In the mid-1960s, AMC was eager to expand on the excitement generated by its first AMX prototype. The original design, with its two-seat layout and rumble-style ramble seat, had been a bold experiment that hinted at AMC's willingness to challenge Detroit norms. But AMC's designers also knew that two-seat cars sold in limited numbers, so they began to imagine a variation that could appeal to a broader audience. Out of this thinking emerged the AMX Second, a sleeker, slightly larger concept that aimed to blend sporty style with greater practicality. The AMX Second was about 8 inches longer than the original AMX prototype, and this stretch allowed designers to add a proper back seat, making it a 4-passenger coupe rather than a strict 2-seater. The roofline flowed gracefully into the rear, offering a more elegant grand touring profile compared to the aggressive short wheelbase look of the first AMX. Up front, hidden headlamps gave the car a clean, futuristic face, while the overall proportions suggested a blend of European sophistication and American muscle. AMC also used the concept to debut advanced features such as automatic door locks that engaged when the car was in motion, and a safety lighting system with green, amber, and red taillights designed to indicate braking intensity. Richard Teague, AMC's design chief, envisioned the AMX Second as a car that could straddle two worlds, sporty enough to attract younger buyers, but practical enough for small families who wanted flair without sacrificing usability. The added rear seating addressed one of the main criticisms of the first AMX prototype, which many felt was too limited in its appeal. By broadening the design, the AMX Second looked more like something that could make the leap from show car to production. Public reaction to the AMX Second was positive when it toured as part of AMC's Project 4th traveling exhibit. The concept's smooth lines, modern features, and 4-passenger layout convinced many that AMC could indeed compete with the likes of Ford's Mustang and Chevrolet's Camaro if it chose to put such a car into production. But AMC's limited finances and strategic caution ultimately meant that the AMX Second remained a design study. Even though it never reached dealerships, the AMX Second influenced AMC's design language in subtle ways. Its flowing roofline and refined surfaces pointed the way for the production Javelin, which arrived in 1968. In this way, the AMX Second served as an important bridge between a daring prototype and a market-ready pony car, showing how AMC balanced bold design with real-world considerations. Number 3. 1966 AMC AMX Project 4th Original Prototype. In 1966, AMC shocked the industry by unveiling one of the boldest concepts in its history, the original AMX prototype. This car was the star of AMC's Project 4th Traveling Show, a collection of advanced design studies meant to prove that the smallest American automaker could think as boldly as any of its Detroit rivals. What set the AMX apart was its daring two-seat layout and a novel feature AMC called the ramble seat, essentially a modern interpretation of the old-fashioned rumble seat, tucked into the rear deck. The prototype was constructed in fiberglass and was a pillarless coupe with clean, flowing lines that gave it an athletic and futuristic appearance. Its proportions were compact, aggressive, and perfectly in tune with the emerging pony car trend. The ramble seat could be flipped up from the rear deck to provide occasional seating, allowing passengers to ride exposed to the elements in a way that recalled pre-war motoring traditions. This quirky yet charming feature captured the imagination of showgoers and set the AMX apart from anything else on the road. Although it was never meant for mass production in this exact form, the AMX prototype was fully functional and underwent testing at AMC's proving grounds. Reports suggest that at least 2 prototypes were constructed, each serving as a tangible test of whether AMC's vision for a sporty 2-seater could be feasible. For a company usually known for sensible family cars, the AMX concept sent a strong message that AMC could compete with the likes of Ford's Mustang and Chevrolet's Camaro, not just in practicality, but in performance and style as well. The reaction to the AMX at auto shows was overwhelmingly positive. Enthusiasts loved its compact proportions, sporty demeanor, and the playful ramble seat gimmick. More importantly, AMC executives recognized that this design could serve as the basis for a production car with only modest reworking. Within 2 years, the production AMX would debut as a 2-seat muscle coupe, dropping the ramble seat but retaining the aggressive stance and sporty character that had made the prototype so popular. The 1966 AMX prototype thus occupies a pivotal place in AMC's history. It marked the company's transition from purely practical vehicles into the performance arena, while also showcasing the creativity of Richard Teague's design studio. Though the exact prototype never reached dealerships, it paved the way for one of AMC's most beloved production models, and it remains an enduring symbol of the company's willingness to take risks when survival demanded boldness. Number 2. 1966 AMC Cavalier. In 1966, AMC unveiled the Cavalier concept as part of its Project 4th Traveling Design Showcase, a unique roadshow meant to highlight the company's creative thinking for the future. The Cavalier was not a performance machine or a flashy sports car like some of AMC's other prototypes. It was a forward-looking study in efficiency, practicality, and cost-saving design. At a time when the Big Three were locked in a horsepower war, AMC took a contrarian approach, focusing on innovations that could make cars cheaper to build and easier to maintain. The Cavalier's most remarkable feature was its use of interchangeable body panels. The front and rear fenders were identical, as were the bumpers and even the doors, which could be swapped from one side of the car to the other. This kind of symmetry dramatically reduced tooling complexity and meant fewer unique parts had to be manufactured, cutting costs for both production and repairs. On paper, it was a brilliant solution for a company like AMC, which was always seeking ways to stretch its limited resources. The styling of the Cavalier was also distinctive, though not in an overtly sporty way. It was a compact 4-door sedan with a pillarless design, riding on a 108-inch wheelbase. The roofline was clean and modern, and the overall look was understated but futuristic, signaling that AMC was thinking about the next decade rather than clinging to established trends. Suicide doors at the rear added a touch of flair while also making entry and exit easier. Inside, the Cavalier was functional but carried enough refinement to make it more than just a stripped-down experiment. AMC wanted to show that practicality and economy did not have to come at the expense of comfort. The car featured a simple but elegant dashboard layout, wide seating for passengers, and a spacious feel that made the most of its compact footprint. Public reaction to the Cavalier was mixed. Some admired its ingenuity and the potential cost savings its interchangeable parts promised, while others felt it lacked the glamour of AMC's sportier concepts like the AMX or Vixen. Still, the Cavalier had an undeniable influence. Elements of its practicality-focused design philosophy carried forward into AMC's production lineup, proving that even a show car could help set the tone for the company's future strategy. In hindsight, the 1966 Cavalier was one of AMC's most clever but overlooked experiments. It reflected the company's constant need to innovate around financial constraints, a theme that defined much of AMC's history. Though it never made it to production, it remains a fascinating glimpse into how AMC envisioned building smarter, more efficient cars decades before cost-cutting and platform sharing became industry-wide norms. Number 1. 1965 AMC Vixen. In the mid-1960s, AMC's design chief Richard Teague was orchestrating a string of bold concept cars that would become part of the company's famed Project Fourth showcase. Among these was the Vixen, a compact fastback sedan that offered a tantalizing preview of what AMC's next-generation small cars might look like. While it never reached production, the Vixen captured the imagination of enthusiasts and design critics alike, standing out as one of AMC's most forward-thinking prototypes of the era. The Vixen's styling was sporty and modern, breaking sharply from AMC's reputation for boxy and conservative ramblers. It featured a long hood with a functional air intake blister, giving the impression of hidden power beneath the surface. Unique 45-degree roof vents were incorporated into the C-pillars, intended to provide extra visibility when parking, an ingenious touch that also added to its futuristic appearance. At the rear, the car sported a deeply recessed concave backlight, a design flourish that made the rear window nearly invisible from both inside and out. These details gave the Vixen a character all its own, more European grand tourer than American economy sedan. Beneath the dramatic styling, the Vixen was meant to foreshadow AMC's upcoming compact offerings, particularly what would eventually become the 1970 Hornet. Its semi-fastback proportions suggested agility and style, qualities AMC desperately needed if it hoped to compete with the wave of sporty compacts arriving from Detroit. The car's low stance and aggressive detailing gave AMC's design team a platform to demonstrate that they could think beyond practicality and appeal to a younger, style-conscious audience. When the Vixen was shown as part of Project Fourth in 1966, it generated significant attention, even alongside flashier concepts like the AMX prototype. Critics praised its originality and attention to detail, though some noted its unusual rear window might prove impractical if carried into production. Still, the Vixen showed AMC's growing confidence in design experimentation at a time when its survival depended on standing out against much larger competitors. Ultimately, the Vixen never made it to showrooms. AMC's limited resources and conservative management meant the company often backed away from its most daring concepts in favor of safer, more conventional vehicles. Yet the Vixen's DNA lived on, its styling cues echoing through later AMC models and cementing Richard Teague's reputation as one of Detroit's most resourceful designers. Today, the 1965 Vixen is remembered as a lost opportunity, a bold vision of what AMC could have built had circumstances allowed. It was not only a concept car but also a statement. AMC could dream just as boldly as the Big Three, even if it didn't always have the means to turn those dreams into reality.